Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, welcome. My name is Kitty. On my channel, one of my favorite things that I like to do is tell scary stories, whether that be you guys sending them in and then I simply read them. So if that's something you're interested in, make sure to keep watching until the very end. I also like to do thrifting hauls, makeup related videos, vlogs, and I do live streams. So if one of those 5 things is something that you might be interested in, please consider subscribing. This story takes place in the 90s, a time when a cell phone in sight was rare and being in the moment was more common. As a little kid growing up, I always looked forward to Labor Day weekend because my family and I always attended the festivities, rodeo, parade, carnival, powwow that happened in White River, Arizona around this time each year. Plus, being in colder weather always made me happy. One year, after a fun-filled weekend, my family and I were driving back home to San Carlos, Arizona on a cold, stormy night. It was raining and hailing a lot. As you can imagine, being in a rural area, there wasn't much around, and it was dark with hardly any lighting in sight. When we were between White River and another area within the reservation, Cedar Creek, both locations are approximately 20 minutes apart from each other. My dad was driving, my mom was in the passenger seat. I was in the back seat with my younger sister. I remember feeling relaxed, looking out the window, watching the rain hit the window while lightning and thunder took over the sky. As I was about to doze off into sleep, I heard my mom yell to my dad, "Be careful, there's a lady walking on the road." My dad said, "It's a lady and a little girl. I'm going to stop and ask if they need a ride." They both agreed that we should pick up the lady and child since it was dark and raining. My dad pulled up to the lady and the little girl. The woman was an Apache elderly lady. I noticed she was wearing a cover on her head, something like what the Little Red Riding Hood wore, and the little girl was maybe about 5 or 6 years old. They both had no jacket and didn't seem to be affected by the cold weather. My dad asked her in Apache, "Do you need a ride? Where are you going?" The woman responded, "Yes, Carrizo. We are headed to Carrizo." Keep in mind, Carrizo was 30 miles from where they were walking. They both got into the back seat of our vehicle. The woman and the little girl sat next to my sister and I noticed the little girl didn't say anything. She sat there very quietly and looked down. The woman was conversating in Apache with my dad. I remember my dad asking her for her name. She said Helen. 30 to 40 minutes had passed and we arrived in Carrizo. The elderly woman gave us directions to which home she wanted to be dropped off at. We dropped her off. She was appreciative of the ride and said thank you. Rather than going through the front door, she walked in the back of the house. We drove away and headed home to San Carlos. Fast forward to 2 or 3 weeks later, my dad was having a conversation with some friends and relatives from White River. My dad was telling them the story of picking up the elderly woman and the little girl. He told these people the name of the woman. The faces of these individuals, once they heard the name, was eerie. They were in shock. We come to find out this elderly woman and little girl had died years ago. To this day, I get chills thinking that I had sat next to ghosts. As an adult, I vowed to never pick up any hitchhikers, no matter if I think it may be a good deed or not. Whoa, I got chills. Man, that's trippy. I've heard stories about people picking up hitchhikers, especially in the canyon area, like the Salt River Canyon area, It's like a no-no. Everyone says don't pick up hitchhikers there because they're pretty much like ghosts. So, and I've heard of I want to say an elderly lady too that they see in that canyon. But that canyon is it's pretty scary. There's like some major vibes going on. Yeah, that canyon definitely has an eerie feeling to it. This story was a good one. Thank you for sending in your story. Let's get to the next one. This next story comes from the San Carlos Apache Reservation. My aunt once told me the story of her and my other aunt and two of their guy friends. After she told me, she said, "Ask your other aunt. She'll say the same thing." And she did. One evening, they went for a ride to the lake store, only to find out it was closed. So they decided to take a ride toward Coolidge Dam. So in San Carlos, there is a man-made lake that is about 25 minutes out of the main area. Anyways, it's far from the living communities, and a lot of people go out there. A lot of people go out there to go take a cruise. A lot of people go out to the dam, which is Coolidge Dam. There's a lot of fatalities that happened over there. There's a lot of paranormal activity that happened out there. And keep in mind that in this area, the lake area, is where the original old San Carlos used to be, meaning that's where they used to hand out the rations, and that's where all the bad stuff happened, okay? So there's definitely a lot of activity out that way. They were driving for a while, not in a rush, just cruising. And my aunt asked out of curiosity before they went any further, "You know where we're going, right?" Her guy friend responds, "Of course." So they continued on for some time. Then, caught up in good company, they finally realized it was dark and they didn't know this particular area they were in. The hills on both sides of the dirt road and what seemed like small houses made of rock or sand on both sides, and there was a lot of them. Although it was dark, they could see small people moving around in those small houses. They were probably around 3 feet tall at max. My aunt instantly got scared. She didn't want to look at them. Instead, she kept her eyes on the dirt road in front of them. They continued on. Her guy friend kept assuring her that they should be coming up to the main road soon. But she knew in the back of her mind that they were lost. She said they kept talking about the other things to keep their minds off of the fact that they were lost in the back roads. Then all of a sudden, they were hearing bells around them. They all heard it and looked at one another. The driver stopped the car and the bells stopped. My aunt said she was looking straight forward, and in light from the headlights of the truck was a huge saguaro cactus. Had to be as tall as a light post. She said in that instant, a clown, which is a crown dancer, as tall as that saguaro cactus, came out from behind the cactus and stood there, pounding its left foot on the ground. That's the bells they were hearing. Their eyes all wide, looking at each other. They knew they were seeing the same thing. So the driver floored it, and they continued, but that clown was running beside the truck. They looked in their rear view mirror and saw that there were more crown dancers all around the truck, just as tall. 2 were holding the truck bed down, so it was hard for the truck to catch speed. They all yelled not to stop, but just keep going. They continued for what seemed like forever. Then they saw they had made it to the main road, only to find out that they were in Winkleman. That's crazy. As they turned onto the main road, the crown dancers still had a hold of the truck. It was starting to get blue at this point. In a few seconds, the crown dancers let go, but they could still hear the bells. And right there, a deer ran across the road right in front of the truck. The driver stepped on the brakes and didn't hit the deer. But if it were a second later, they would have hit that deer and been in a very bad wreck. Both my aunts were petrified with fear at this point, but the morning light gave them some relief. My aunt's guy friend said, "F that, I'm going straight to my grandpa's." So they went straight there. As they pulled up his driveway, he was already out on the porch standing there. They got out, and before they could say anything, he said, "I've been waiting for you guys. I knew you guys were in trouble and would be coming. Let's pray." He told them that if they had just gone on about their day, something bad would have happened to one or all of them. He told them to be careful and don't be going to places you have no business going to. P.S. My aunties didn't want to go anywhere after that incident. They both slept in the same room and had gone to bed only to be woken up hearing bells. And their window curtains and sometimes window would open and a clown would be looking at them. They would close everything only for it to happen again until it eventually stopped. My family and I were supposed to go night fishing this night at Takalai, but after hearing that story, I was like, nope. Man, that's scary. That's crazy. This is from my res, man. I've heard stories about crown dancers, and they're scary ones. And this is just creepy. It's so far the scariest story I've heard from my reservation so far. I want to say thank you for sending that in. This last story comes from the Navajo Nation. It's titled Yebiche. This story is retold from a former co-worker's experience while working at the Navajo Nation for Department of Transportation, NDOT. He was traveling to work early in the morning, around 3 a.m. from Ganado to Dalcon, Arizona. He was driving alone in a pickup truck. It was dark and nobody on the road. The road was in the middle of nowhere. Homes are scattered, so there's no sign of people for miles until you get closer to the nearest town. As he passed the community of Greasewood, Arizona, he drove up a hill and passed a housing complex. He started to feel an eerie sense of something around him or watching him as he continued to drive. The feeling was strong, and so he looked around in his windows and mirrors but couldn't see anything because it was dark. He continued driving but could still feel something looking at him. He decided to turn on the cargo lights in his truck bed. As soon as he did, he saw through the rearview mirror a figure. The figure looked like a yebiche. It had the mask on and was dressed in full yebiche attire. The figure was hunched over, trying to look through the tinted window. The yebiche also had an owl sitting on his right shoulder. He immediately turned off his cargo lights and sped up faster. He quickly turned around and drove back into town of Greasewood. In town, there are lights where he could see the bed of the truck. He didn't see anything in the back. He was still shocked at what he saw, and he waited for another vehicle to drive through so he could follow the vehicle, but not have to be alone on that road. He made it to his destination without any other incident, but was very shaken up about what happened. My elders once told me that when a yebiche is alone and not during ceremony season, they are up to bad medicine. In the Navajo tradition, an owl is also a symbol or a bearer of bad news. It is a warning that something bad is going to happen. The road he was driving on has been known to have different bad experiences, like ghosts, skinwalkers, or people being chased by other vehicles. I added a picture as a reference of what a yebiche may look like. Wow, it's crazy how these stories that come in kind of like correlate, because the first one was still a scary one, but the second and the third one, they're both like traditional beings, traditional dancers in the Navajo and the Apache culture, yet there's a bad side, it seems like. So pretty scary. That is it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed these stories, and as always, if you want to share your story, you will remain anonymous. No names, nothing like that will ever be mentioned. You can email it to, and I will work on getting it into the next video. Thank you for watching all the way through. Don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up so I know that you enjoyed this video. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.